Oh, this was really just a really clean old Super XP-1020 automatic, and it had a broken recoil. All these mounting spots were broken on the whole, all the way around. I had it wired on. I thought, oh, no big deal. And I had a nice guy, Andrew Seth Price, gave me another one. I put my deal back on, put my recoil back on. Actually, I got another recoil, but I kept the same inside. But this recoil here didn't have a plastic bushing on it, and I think some of them didn't have one, but man, that thing's worn. I don't know if you can see that, but that thing is worn to the point of, oh yeah, you can see that ridge on it. And I don't know if this was bigger than the other one. I needed a bushing. So I put the bushing. I also put the two plastic inner and outer shields behind the spring, on top and bottom of the spring. Now, I noticed that on most of these saws, this is a 2-notch, and mine was a 3-notch. Now, a couple things happened. One, my pawls were coming loose, or had come loose before, and so it was binding up. But now I don't have the pawls loose, but it's still, oh, it's a bear to turn over. It's just a bear. And I'm afraid I'm going to break the mounting bolts on this again. I already stripped this one out, and one of these fell out when I was, after pulling it 100 times, and it's so hard, like it's like 300 pounds psi. But I stripped that out. I epoxied that back in. I just think that this is a Super 1050 outer shell, which doesn't matter much. It's my original recoil, my original starter cup, and this housing came from a 1020. Maybe not an automatic, but 1020. I don't think there's anything wrong with that other than it was stripped out on that one deal. Something's going on here between the starter cup and these pawls. And there they are. And I'm wondering whether those are the right pawls, because they seem to go a little bit, well, I guess that's all right. The cup would be out that far. Or if I should have a two slot starter cup here instead of the 3, or if those pawls are wrong or worn. They didn't seem worn. The whole saw was clean as, faded, but it had not been used very much. So that's what I'm fighting. It's just did not want to turn. There's no problem with the turning it over. It has great compression. Cylinder and everything was perfect. And another issue I came across while working on that is this little hose, and that little dude hooks onto the carburetor. It has something to do with the idle, and it goes down to the crankcase. Well, that hose was, if that was the original hose, it barely went on to here. It barely went on to here, and it didn't quite go on to here. It was like, yeah, it kind of made it up to the end of it. Didn't really go on. And I never have found this hose. I think this hose came with flared ends on both sides, but it sure could have used to been a little longer. And the thing about this hose is it's real stiff, and that might be because it's real old, but it was stiff enough to where it maintained the bend. So I think it probably was bent like that and flared like that. But impossible to find one with that size outer diameter and inner diameter that'll go through the air box and then connect onto the 2 places. So what I did is that I used this hose here, which is a clear, it's just an air vacuum hose, so I wouldn't worry about it, but it's 1/2 inch OD, 3/8 inch ID. And so I put this hose on it, and but I've done this before, and the problem was when it made that bend like that, it kinked. so it would just kink when it got in here, when it made that bend, because it's a much thinner wall. But I needed it to be that big to go over the ends. So what I did was I got this was 3/8 by, this was half by 3/8. Then I got this 3/8 OD, 1/4 inch ID, and I put a piece of that inside there that runs from about the bend on down to the other point to where it reinforces it. So that worked out pretty good. I did another one like this where I just suffered through with the bend and tried to warm it up and get the bend out, but it didn't work too well. But that looks like a better deal. Another thing is that this oil reservoir was loose. I mean, there's a gasket on it, but every one of these I've seen, when I've come across, these things are loose. And I've gotten new ones before, and you have to drill the daggum holes out to get the screws in on the new ones. So if you get an old one, it might be better than getting a new one on the reservoirs. But I don't know why so many of these the reservoirs are loose. Before I put this tank back on, I may take this off and check the gasket and the filter. Since I've got it down this far, I'm going to put a new hose from here, Tygon hose from the carb to the tank. The hose inside the tank is good, but I've got to still get this starter cup and pawl situation figured out. But those pawls, when I got the saw, one of these, somebody had got the spring tightened underneath of the stud, and it wasn't working at all. In fact, one of the pawls was frozen back away from there, and I think it happened when, I don't know when it happened, but somebody screwed this saw up from the very early in its life, and somehow had to do with the pawls, I think. And then it became so hard to start that it broke out every one of these. And then they had baling wire hooking around it. And like I said, I got a good deal on this saw, I don't mind. But now I've got a mismatched piece with the starter recoil, the housing, and I don't know what went on with before I got it on the starter pawls itself, or this screen. And I've tried to clean that screen up and see if anything was going on the outside that cup with that screen, but I couldn't see anything having a problem there either. So I'll just keep working on it. I may order some new pawls and see if that helps, or see if they're different. But I'll get it here before too long.